Hello and welcome back to MR340 Paddler. And what we're dealing with today is nutrition. Every race, people talk about, especially leading up to the MR340, what do you eat during the race? Not talking specifically to me, but in general on the forums, on Facebook, and elsewhere. I wanted to go through sort of what works for me. This is basically what is handed to me at every checkpoint. So my ground crew will hand me a gallon-sized bag. It'll be labeled with Caw, Lexington, Waverly, whatever. That's the bag that they give me at that checkpoint. And while I do make some alterations from checkpoint to checkpoint, some things are always there. One of the things I always carry is a couple of packs of applesauce or fruit puree. And the reason for that is it is a fast source of sugar for fructose. Also, I have found that if my stomach shuts down during the race, I can always consume this. And it's not much. It's 60 calories, but at the same time, very useful, very effective. And you can get different flavors now. Always get the ones with the large tops. Because trust me, by day 2, the end of day 2 or day 3, you are not going to be able to pull off a tiny little top. Your hands are not going to function real well. I also frequently carry Cliffs bars, usually 2 per bag, and I carry 2 of the applesauces per bag as well. And these are very effective. Now, I did run into a problem in 2012. It was incredibly hot that year. We were dealing with triple-digit temperatures as highs every day. If you ever want to look into the historical temperatures of the MR340, look at Doug Robinette's information that he's put together. It's spectacular. And if Doug, if you're watching, you're my hero. And you can see what the temperatures have been and where that can cause problems. When it's really hot, these are really dry, and it's about the last thing you really want to eat. However, if it's not, they work pretty well. You can take a bite or 2, throw it in your PFD, and hopefully not forget about it. Because if you do that, you end up with about 10 partial Cliffs bars in your PFD, and if that gets wet, it's not good. I always carry 1 or 2 Cliffs gels per checkpoint. This is far less than the recommendation. The recommendation on the gel says to use 1 every 30 to 45 minutes. If you do that, your stomach will probably shut down. It's too much sugar, and when you get too high a concentration of sugars in your stomach, it doesn't play well. So you want to be careful with it. But I use it as a pick-me-up. So if I'm particularly tired or I'm just sort of finding myself trying to grit it out, I will use one of these. There are caffeinated versions. We'll talk about caffeine in a minute. Little Slim Jims. I usually use these later in the race, usually starting at Glasgow. They're great overnight. And one tricky part is opening them in the boat, as I discovered last year, so I have to find another way of carrying them or repackaging them. But the really spicy flavor on night 1 is enough to really wake me up and keep me active for another hour or 2. So that's fantastic. And last year, one of those horrible 340 stories, night 1, I couldn't open this package. And so I actually started just chewing on the package and trying to chew the meat out of it. I don't recommend it. It's not a great thing. The basis of my nutrition bag is usually some kind of calorie replacement shake. Here we have Boost High Protein and Ensure High Calorie. I also carry regular, because every race I might be dealing with situations where one of these will upset my stomach, but another one won't. Why do I carry them? Again, going back to 2012, my stomach shut down at Lexington, and I wasn't able to really eat much of anything until Jeff City. I'm not sure how in the world I actually got through that day and a half or 2 days where everything was shut down. But these shakes were one of the things I could consume, and each of these contains between 250 and 350 calories. So you've got a lot of calories. It's got the electrolytes. It's got the proteins. It works really well. it tastes pretty bad when it's 100 degrees. I'm just going to warn you, it's like drinking sweet death. But it's better than some other options I've tried. So this is something you would want to experiment with before the race, but it's something I recommend just to give you some calories and some protein to keep moving. Now, some people use different things. Some people use Hammer Perpetuum, or Spitz is very popular in Texas. There are other things out there. There's the Bowel Busters and all of those kinds of mixes. They work great, but you need to experiment ahead of time, because in my case, I do not play well with Sustained Energy or Perpetuum. It might be the soy protein, it might be something else, but after about 6 hours it upsets my stomach. So it's one of those things you want to experiment before you get to the long races. I also wanted to talk about coffee and caffeine. Caffeine works great in the MR340. At least in my experience, it works great once. Once you open this demon, you're in trouble. Last year, night 2, I hit the caffeine, hit actually 2 5-hour energies outside of Washington, and the result was fantastic. In seconds, my hallucinations disappeared and I felt good and kept going. And then 5.5 hours later, only about 10 miles or so outside of St. Charles, I crashed. And it was bad. And the hallucinations came back with a vengeance. Angry tree animals all around me. And if you haven't been in the race and you don't know what I'm talking about, just bear with me, everyone hallucinates. It got worse. And I tried to hit more caffeine and just couldn't get back into a rhythm. So you have to be very careful with caffeine. Some people are good with it. Some people, you drink your coffee every day out of your MR340 mug. But for a lot of us, this is going to be a problem. It's best that you find other ways to wake up when you can. One other thing, this nutrition setup works for me. It may not work for you. I know guys who eat nothing but pickles, chips, nuts, and Coke, and they get through the race really well. I know others that consume nothing but Sustained Energy throughout the race. It's what works for you. You will never replace all the calories that you're burning. It's just impossible. But you need to consume something. If you don't eat something once an hour or so, even just a bite or two of a Cliffs bar, then your stomach's going to shut down, and the next time you try to eat, you will get nauseous. So make sure that there's some comfort foods in here for you. Make sure that there's things that are going to be particularly effective, even if it's things that you have to choke down sometimes. They're going to help you continue on through the race. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, quarrels, qualms, quandaries, curse words, please leave a comment below. Otherwise, keep your paddle wet, and I will talk to you next time.